So the idea of federalism is basically these multiple layers of government, multiple levels, if you will. The clearest example, of course, is the fact that there are 50 individual states, each with its own government and its own set of laws, collected together under one big government that unites all of them, that one in Washington, D.C. We call that one the federal government. And this balance of power between what states are allowed to do for themselves and what the federal government is allowed to do for all of the states, that conversation, that is the basic idea of federalism. Now, it is a very fluid idea. It's something that is kind of always in a state of change. But what we're going to talk about is the foundational principles and what create the clear and concise divisions of power that we can identify. So, in the early days of the United States, you may remember from US history that when the 13 colonies first got rid of the British and established their own government, it kind of sucked. It didn't work out super well under what was called the Articles of Confederation, because that central government, the federal government, had very little power over the states. Most importantly, it couldn't collect taxes. Each state would collect their own taxes and they could kind of decide what they wanted to do with them. And that central government that owed all these people that fought in the war, all the soldiers, money, it owed them payment, and it couldn't pay them because it didn't have any money and it couldn't collect any taxes. So a group of rich white guys get together, a couple from each state, in order to try to solve this problem. And very quickly, as the story goes, this dude, Alexander Hamilton, stands up and he says, I think we should just start from scratch, write our own new constitution, new form of government, and go from there. And this is pretty much accepted as a good idea. But quickly, amongst the large group, two subgroups emerge. Those who agree with Alexander Hamilton that we need a stronger central government, they were called the Federalists. So they thought that each state could still have its own government, but there should be one central federal government that controls all of them and has ultimate authority. Now, the anti-Federalists, who were generally led by Thomas Jefferson, disagreed. They thought that each state should have its own country with some agreements between them to trade and do stuff like that. But they were really concerned about this idea of one strong central government, thinking that it could favor states that didn't already have their own power. We see this illustrated in the Hamilton musical, particularly in this cabinet battle. Now, this cabinet battle is specifically about an issue after the Constitution had been written and ratified, but this tension between Federalists and Anti-Federalists continued, specifically between Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson. Now, in this, they're arguing over whether or not to create a national bank, something that would ultimately happen, but the same sentiments are there. So I recommend you go pause this video, I'll wait, go to Schoology, watch it, and follow along with the lyrics. See if you can identify the primary concerns of Thomas Jefferson's Anti-Federalists versus Hamilton's Federalists. When you're ready, come on back to this video. I assume you just paused. All right, you're back. Welcome. I hope you enjoyed it. So as you heard, the split was mostly economic. Now, when we say economics, as we'll examine later in this semester, can mean a lot of different things kind of on the side, right? So when we talk about economics, the Southern economy was very strong, but because they had a free labor source, slaves. And so the underlying implication is that they are nervous about people in the North who are starting to talk about the idea of getting rid of slavery because it would destroy the Southern economy. So the Federalists wanted to split the debts, is what they're talking about in the video, from the war amongst the states, so that the economy could grow more quickly, basically get rid of that debt so that people could start making more money. The Anti-Federalists thought the opposite. They were skeptical of this idea of one strong central government, especially after getting rid of a king, and they didn't want to have to share all of that wealth that was coming from that plantation economy. They were very skeptical of those northern elites who, as you heard Thomas Jefferson accuse Hamilton of, wanting to just move their money around in what would ultimately become the New York Stock Exchange.